I'm Kevin Jacobsen of Gold Derby here with Charlie Barnett, who plays Alan on Russian Doll. And just to start here, I'm curious, before production began for season two, what was your reaction when you found out about just the overall premise for the season and how it was going to involve time travel and, what Alan's journey was going to be?
I think like a lot of fans or just people who watched in general, I'll even count the people who maybe didn't enjoy it as much, but um, I think everyone who watched, myself included, wasn't sure if there needed to be or if there was going to be a second season, to be honest. Um, it felt so beautifully tied up at the end and yet completely open. You know what I mean? It was untied denouement to a certain extent. And I thought it was really beautiful to kind of achieve that. So when I got the call that Natasha wanted to move into the second season, I think she had always had that plan, her, Leslie, and Amy to a certain extent. Um, I was excited and terrified. It's a mutual. It was thrilling to imagine that we were going into these other realms, but terrified on how we could carry in what we had, the beauty of what we had in the first season into the second season, which I think everybody who is in this industry, and Natasha brought up something really beautifully continually while we were doing this interview process of it being her sophomore album, and it related so clearly. And I think everyone goes through that experience, especially when you have something that is a success. You want to maintain it and you want to see it kind of elevate to the next level. I think
Right.
she did.
I think so too. But there is always that fear of the sophomore slump. But I'm curious, you had that long break between season one and season two. Did it take a little bit to sort of get back into Alan?
Yes, yes, and Alan is in such a different place in the second season, and it terrified me too. I work from fear a lot. I don't know if it's a negative place. I think it's like if you can maneuver through fear and terror in a positive way and continue to push healthily, of course, then you can find some really interesting stuff because it keeps you on an edge, in a different kind of mentality. So that being said, Alan was so in such a better place than he when we left him. Um, so much more maybe centered into himself and excited to explore and risk a little more. I think that is still within a parameter of Alan's, picket fence, so to speak, mental picket fence. But it it was worrying to me that I would be so far away from the Alan that everyone experienced coming in that no one would connect him to where he was. That I just would enter with a different kind of person. So I um, I found a way in through his physicality again. His physicality and through honestly, there's something about Alan and connecting his life to music for me, and I don't do that with every character, but I found songs that I would play and listen to daily to just bring me back in. Yeah.
Well, before we dive too much into everything, I do want to talk about, speaking of a little bit of physicality, the mustache, which he did not have in the first season, but it's kind of a fun revelation when we first see him this season. Just curious what the discussions were about giving him a different kind of appearance.
The fascination with his mustache, I love. Man, when I grew a mustache. Um, I've fought for a mustache in a character for a while, and I continually lose. I mean, look at this baby stash going on here. I can barely grow in between. You know what I'm saying? So like, part of me is just trying to be like play around with a different look on my face. I'll admit to the vanity around that. Um, the other side though is I I mean, I feel like such an idiot in, really, in admitting this, but I felt a little more masculinity. I felt a little more age. I felt a little more power when I first grew a mustache. And I related that into what Alan is always searching for. We definitely, we definitely feel each other out in that world, and just searching for something to identify you as a more of a oh a position in this earth and as a person. Um, I made a little bit of a backstory that is like throwawayable, but I connect it to I saw Alan's father as being this kind of like Egyptian man, and something about Egyptian culture that I've always connected to, and it was just kind of like a little bit of a secret for me to have that. And there's a culturally Egyptian men, just even Middle Eastern men, can have like these beautiful thick mustaches too. And I connected that Alan at some point through this journey and coming into the second season was feeling his manly oats and wanted to obtain that power, and it was through reflecting this mustache that he saw in his father all the time. Um, Ultimately, we realized that a lot of that is just smoke and mirrors, and the power is in with you, or the power is within you. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, when we see him at first this season, he's being set up with all these potential girlfriends, and he's kind of unhappy. And, this time travel presents him with the opportunity to do something very exciting and live as another person. And I feel like he almost gets a certain kind of thrill out of like kind of chasing the high of, going back in time. So can you talk about just what he's going through just on an emotional level and what this device, this time travel kind of allows him to do and like what it allows him to feel basically?
Part of the reason I think he's in such a different place and on this beginnings of this new kind of journey is that he has the freedom to go in and out. He realizes that unlike last season, there's no control in the deaths, It happens when you're not expecting, and then you just have to start kind of accepting it. It's kind of a beautiful irony of the situation that they're in. In this world, he has the control to leave whenever he wants. He can go back to that train. And I think he finds a certain kind of like sneaky joy in that. He starts to kind of, in my opinion, also take advantage of the situation. He's not considering the circumstance of like, this is a woman of color in a place, in a country that, albeit they have welcomed her, she's probably not as welcomed as most of the people, even the compatriots that she's traveling with. Not to mention the 9 men from Ghana that she would be traveling with. Um, on top of being an immigrant and a woman in that time period. And he slips in and has a gay old time. No pun.
Right.
Uh, um, it's to me it was a little bit manipulative, or at least taking advantage of her situation to a certain extent. And I think that kind of like slaps him in the face towards the end. Whether or not he comes to the realization is kind of questionable, but um, I think ultimately he realizes that I can't live with a mask, and I can't take on anyone else's persona in order to fill some part of myself. But through it, he really has a fun time. I think in the relations to Lenny or to Xander, um, Xander, um, they they both get lost in the fun of it all. I think Alan is not coming from an experience of necessarily like consciously exploring his sexuality or trying to identify in this other world or other persona. I think he's just having fun and found himself in a love triangle that feels good inside and right, and he wants to explore that more so than like, hey, I'm kissing a guy or any of the stuff. It's genuine and real. um yeah, I think what's fascinating is when you see the reflection between Carolyn's performance and mine. The two worlds can be different, but the outcome is the same. She may be experiencing this guy kissing me in a hallway, and how dangerous that could be. She's an immigrant and a student. She could be kicked out at any point to interracial relations in that country, and most countries at the time period were not recognized, let alone illegal. So there is an immense danger. She's experiencing that. Alan, living in the the doll of her body, is experiencing what's going on. Is this guy trying to sleep with me? Is this interesting? What is am I interested in this, or no? I'm just living in my grandmother and wait, is she hooking up with this guy? Is this my grandfather? You know what I mean? There's so many other things playing out. Um, I just got hooked onto that part of it. I'm kind of losing track of where the question was too. I got deep down into a Russian doll hole.
It's all right. No, it happens. Well, I'm actually curious, speaking to the sense of, becoming another person essentially, and sort of the ethics of that. Just with working with Carolyn Michelle Smith, who is playing his grandmother. Um, how much were the two of you able to talk about your approach and her approach and sort of maybe blending them together?
So much, so
Mm.
much. Funnily enough, to the end of it, I realized I don't know that we necessarily needed it. There was so much that was naturally there. A lot. I'm going to give us credit probably due to the work and these conversations, but Carolyn and I went to college together. She was a year under, 2 years under my me and my class at Juilliard, and from the get we were close friends. We our energies just synced, and when Natasha reached out to me, and she had reached out to me before we cast Agnes, this character, about finding someone, her and Chloe had this relations history, rich history that they were able to play into. Such a an amazing tool to take advantage of, but also utilize in the best ways. And I think her and Alex really wanted Natasha and Alex really wanted to find that kind of a connection or relationship for me to enter into. And Carolyn was one of my first thoughts. And of course, she had to audition and do all the gamut, but earned it out, rightfully so. And we when we started working together, because we had that connection already, it made it such a gel. It made it so easy and so much fun. So by the time that we were in Budapest, which was a lot of the stuff that we were filming together, we would sit and have rehearsals in her room. I mean, we would audition each other for other auditions as well. Like we got close on other levels than just the Alan and Agnes sense. Um, and physicalities was a big way in for each of us. But slowly we started to realize that these are two different people. They aren't they aren't pulling from the same moments. Even Natasha and her mother, as much as you can see from your own family experience. I'm adopted, so it's always this kind of open, really beautiful ended question of how much do I relate to these people? How much is the nurture or the nature kind of feeding into my existence when I know that I'm not blood related to them, but I know I have many traits, many relative traits. It's that kind of like weird edge world that we got to play around in. Um, but the physicality, the energy, the ticks, you know what I mean? Those kind of underlying things were what we wanted to connect from. You recognize it most for me when we're running through that hallway after we had gone to see if Lenny had already dug the tunnel and left. We had a lot of fun working on that one and just kind of finding little beats. And it's such a quick scene, but when we both watched it, we were like, "That's it. We got it there. We got it there." It's like a nice little fine blend.
Oh,
It's a hard line to balance, trying to like play yourself and play somebody else.
yeah.
Shout out to both Carolyn and Chloe. They did an amazing job.
Yeah, and it's such a tricky dynamic that both of them have to play off there. But yeah, it's weirdly seamless.
Yeah. We
Um,
realize, I think, at the end of the day, at least from watching it too, it's so funny. You
mhm.
go in with rules, and then those rules fall apart. But then you realize after seeing it, you're like, oh, it made sense in an entirely different route. But we didn't have to do as much work in that connection because it was innately there. Just I guess because our relationships. I mean, I don't know. It was really really interesting.
Mm. Well, by the end of the season, we have his grandmother actually speaking to him in the void and sort of telling him that he can't be afraid to make the wrong choice, that he just has to kind of live in the present more or less. And so now I'm just sort of wondering, where does he go from here?
He goes on to live. Hopefully a little more comfortably in his own shoes. It's like, as minuscule as that sounds, I know I would kill for that, you know, sometimes, like, just to feel more comfortable in my own skin. And Lord S knows it is a long, long, long journey to getting to those places, I think. I haven't reached it. Uh, I'm still trying to live through the cavities of other people to figure out myself. Um, yeah, I don't know where he goes, and it's kind of exciting to be where we were in the first season as like a, you know, technical show side of it. That I have no clue where the story could go from here. I guarantee that Natasha and Leslie and Amy and I'm sure Alex have some ingenious ideas. I pitched them on an idea that this is so stupid, but I thought by the end of season 2 that I was like, you know what? There's a budding relationship between Alan and Maxine. I feel like they
Oh,
will have
okay.
a life together. I sent that text to Natasha. I didn't get a reply on that one. Yeah.
Left you
uh,
on red.
she was doing S&M. It's cool. It's cool.
Gotcha.
Um, but I don't know, and I'm excited to see. But I can tell you from my creative actor standpoint, I think he walked out of this season of this experience feeling even more secure in his own self, and that's the ultimate goal throughout. Correct, but this first season had a the first season he almost came out with a more of a security in taking those risks and like exploring those parts of himself. Now this second season I feel like he has realized that the exploration has helped solidify everything that he was, and he can return to his own being rather than trying to find something. So I'm excited in this third season of him really getting to live it. You know, Natasha and I have talked a lot about how this first season was about death, second season was about life. I see it as death and getting to live, and now, you know, that doesn't make sense, right? Getting a like getting a chance to like step up to the plate of like, I'm ready to be here, I'm ready to play and participate, and now you get to like actually play the game in this third season. I hope, and that's why love and this kind of relationship with Maxine I thought was an interesting route to go. But you know, yeah, we'll wait to see,
Yeah.
family.
No matter what happens, though, I do think at least you end with Alan on a happier note, you know. So
Yeah.
there you go. But unfortunately, we are out of time. But for those of you watching, subscribe for more interviews and go to goldderby.com to make your Emmy predictions. Thank you so much, Charlie.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.